Good afternoon, everybody. Hey, Oz. It's Friday, it's lunchtime, and it's time for your weekly dose of Future Law Bootcamp. I'm your host, Joe Borstein, CEO of LexFusion and general total freak about legal innovation. As always on Future Law, the lawyers of tomorrow meet the change makers of today. And as always, we discuss the tectonic forces bubbling under the surface of the $800 billion legal industry. Globalization today is allowing lawyers and other professionals from all over the world to work seamlessly on legal work. Technology is automating routine processes, but it's relentlessly crawling up the value chain too, dabbling in more and more sophisticated legal tasks. And of course, the status quo of legal regulation is being questioned and challenged, allowing sometimes professionals from outside of the bar to work alongside lawyers to solve problems at scale. Finally, we talk about outside investors who are pouring in. These investors see opportunity to make a broken system a little bit better. And as futurist Pierre Diamandis likes to say, if you want to make $1 billion, you should try to find a way to help 1 billion people. Law affects every single person on this planet, and there are a lot of people to help and a lot of money to make in the process. So whatever drives you, idealism, greed, excitement, I think all lawyers should be paying a little bit of attention to the legal innovation space. You might just find your purpose here. So today we're going to talk with Oz, who I'm going to introduce in a second, about a couple fun ideas, the Japanese concept of ikigai, or loosely professional meaning of life, and of course the Gordian knot as applied to legal innovation. So today, Oz Benamram is the Chief Knowledge Officer and Innovation Officer at Simpson Thacher, where he provides strategic direction on knowledge management, innovation, and practice technology. He joined the firm in 2020 after a long tenure at White & Case, so two of the most fantastic firms in the world. He has led them through the age of legal tech. He also runs a fantastic yearly event called Skills, where about 200 legal innovation and knowledge officers come together to compare notes, and that's coming up too. He's also hiring, so pay attention. He's going to be building a huge and world-class legal innovation team and knowledge team within Simpson Thacher. So if you're buying, if you're selling, if you're using legal technology as an attorney, you need to know Oz. So with that, welcome, Oz.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So I just, I like to ask this question of everybody that's knee-deep in legal innovation. You're a real lawyer. You practiced at great firms like Mofo and Fulbright. Tell everybody how you kind of what brought you to the world of technology and innovation.
That's a fair question. I never decided to be a lawyer. It was all just happened to me. I started in Israel, where there is a mandatory draft to the army. I was in the army. My girlfriend at the time, my wife now, called and said, if you want to sign up to school next year, it's time to sign up. So I said, sure, sign me up. And she said, what do you want to do? I said, I have no idea. I'm in the middle of, I was in the tanks in southern Lebanon at the time.
Wow.
And I asked her, what's the hardest to get into? I said, law, law, medicine, and psychology. I knew that I don't want to be a doctor or a psychologist. I said, sign me up for law, but I really want to do computer science and economics. Sign me up for all three. I got accepted. At the year, law and economics was a dual degree, so I started that with the intention to switching to do law and computer science, which I never did. So I became a lawyer by default. I was an okay lawyer. I wasn't great at it. I didn't like the details enough as you need to be a great lawyer. I liked more the big picture. And then in 1999, I switched from Fulbright to Mofo. And then after the dot-com crash, they came and said, we need a lawyer to run our KM. It's not an IT problem because we tried to solve it as an IT problem. We didn't get to solve it. We need someone who understands how lawyers practice. And I said, please take me, because I've been doing e-discovery for a year and a half. Then I came to the US to do securities work after being a litigator in Israel. And after the dot-com burst, I did a lot more e-discovery. So I switched to start the knowledge department at Mofo. And that was a very, just happened. It wasn't like a strategic direction. And I remember at the time, my father was very nervous, that you have a real profession. Why would you give it up for this unknown thing called knowledge management? I don't know even you to call it knowledge management. I think my first title was practice resources attorney. So that's how I got there. And then 2008, the next crisis I moved to White & Case, and you should have known when I moved to Simpson Thacher in early 2000 this year that there will be another financial crisis, because
Right.
that's why I moved.
And do your parents now believe you have a real career?
My parents are okay.
So I had a very similar experience. I started in securities litigation and found myself as a 6-year associate, mostly buried in the process of law, e-discovery, triaging, huge incoming productions, and seeing that there was just this entire kind of sub economy in that, and fell a little bit, pardon my French, ass backwards myself. So in early days, when it was this knowledge role, was there a lot of technology involved, and did you regret not getting that computer science degree?
No, I don't regret it. I think I think we're in a good place, because we're in a place to help drive requirements. So we when I was at Moffat, they said, go talk to people and come back and tell us what we need to do. And I came and said, look, we can find everything other than documents, people, and matters at the firm. And the way to do it was to build a new search engine, which is really connecting the two, because in order to find the right document, you care who wrote it and why it was written for. And to find an expert, you need to find what they did and what they worked on. And to find a matter, you need to find the people in the document. So there wasn't a product at the time, and it involved creating this vision. And I came to the firm and said, you need to decide if you want to file for a patent, because this is an innovative way of working. Mm-hmm. And they said, why would we? I said, well, we're going to file a patent in order to prevent the competition from doing the same, to tell the world how great we are, our client, and to one day sell it to Microsoft and make a lot of money. And the answer was, we're never going to sue another law firm, so we're not going to prevent the competition. We could tell the world how great we are without owning the IP, and we are not in the business of writing code. And I said, that's great, because the alternative would have cost us a lot of time, because to do it ourselves will take 3 years, 5 people, and $1 million. And when they said that, the reaction was, you've got the 3 years. So that required us working early on with vendors to develop it. At the time we went to market, we told the vendors, here is the idea, here is the blueprint. If you build it, it's yours. We'll work together. And Recommend were the company that eventually was the one that we worked on, and we did the meta expertise and research. And it was a great ride. It was really on the fun area that I don't have the responsibility for actually delivering it, but to provide a clear direction of what we wanted to do and how we want it to work, and what will make it usable for the lawyers.
There's a bunch of fascinating ideas in there. I kind of want to untangle that. So right now there's a little bit of a debate that goes on Twitter in the legal tech community. So law firms for the first time are building a lot of their own stuff. Like a lot of firms are creating subsidiaries, including a number of the UK firms where in the regulatory scheme, that's a little bit easier there than it is here. But even in the US, many firms are seeding their own subsidiaries with capital from the partners themselves. What's your view there? You obviously liked the idea of working with outside vendors as partners versus build it yourself. Where do you see kind of the future?
So when I just started, I didn't know what knowledge management is, and I went to consult with CKOs in the consulting world, which were ahead of us. And I met with the CKO of Bain at the time, Bob Artsoff, who was a great guy, who told me, I've got the best knowledge management system in the world, and that was my biggest mistake. And I'm like, that's a weird statement. Yeah. But every time I have a new idea, I have to open the textbook. And every time the operating system upgrades, I need to open the textbook. And it becomes, basically, you have a software company for one client. So it's not a very sustainable business model. And that led me to the realization we need to work with a vendor. If you cannot convince a vendor that whatever they build for you, they can sell to others, then you probably don't have a good use case. And if you're still going to go with your desire to build something that is not replicable and not going to help others, you're probably not solving the most important thing for your practice. The only time to build your own solution is where it's really the thing that will change the way you work with your clients, when it will provide such a great client value that others won't be able to do. And because otherwise, most of what we do is really just, it is how we work. It's not what we do. That's not the reason that clients come and select the best law firms in the world, because your software is better, right? If it will change dramatically the process, the way we've been working all along is that we work with the vendors, we help them design it, we get early adopters in terms of timing more than anything else, and we get it to work for us, and then they get to sell it to others. So the competition is always going to be there. And I think the difference between the US and the UK or the Australian market, as I said, both in the Australian market and the Magic Circle, there are only a handful of law firms really that compete with each other.
Right.
And created a very secretive market that you really don't want to share with your competition what you do, because that's what strategic edge. In the US, in New York, there is another 30 firms just as good as you are. And
Right.
That led us to a more rational way of working. We all work with the same vendors happily, because boats, ships all together come together. And I think it is the rational way. So that's the first thing, the business model as a whole. I think generally speaking, most lawyers are not the best software developers. We are not known for two things. One, we're not known for being the most flexible and adaptive necessarily, and we're not known for being risk takers, right? I mean, if we could have been investment bankers and make more money, but we liked the structure and we were trained all these years. We were trained to avoid risk on behalf of our clients. They come to us to avoid risk, right? If they want some strategic idea, they go to the consulting firms. If they want to business opportunity, to go to the bankers. They come to us to seal the deal, to remove risk. So there is kind of ecosystem that involves low risk taking. You and I think, are not part of the average lawyer profile. That's why we were moved naturally. We selected, but also the organization selected us to move to areas that are not the traditional law firm environment. So if you take traditional law firms, writing code is not necessarily the best fit, unless it's to embed it into some expert system where you have unique expertise that you're then embedding. You shift the way that you work, right? If you use something like Neotologic or Brighter or something like that, and you actually take your unique knowledge and you sell it differently in a more leverage model, that makes sense. But that's not writing code, right? This is not.
I would love to come back to that, because I think that to me, that's a big piece of the future. But I don't think many lawyers understand what they can do there with their expertise. But we'll put a pin in that. I promised the audience today we talk about this concept. The word is ikigai. It's not gross. It's not ikigai. It's a Japanese word that loosely translates to your professional meaning of life. It's a combination of what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, and what you can get paid for. So I thought that was a good transition, because you mentioned if you develop software within a firm, you basically have one client, unless you spin that out. I think that the idea of deep specialization in the law is a new one. I wanted to name my company Ikigai, by the way, but the trademark was already taken. And I would agree with you that through deep specialization, you can get far better products. But also there's specialization even within the firm, like roles like CKO and head of innovation. So first, I'll put it out to you generally. What do you think your Ikigai is?
I think it's a combination of a couple of things. One, I love puzzles. I love the challenge of figuring out how to solve it, right? And I love people. I love the interactions with people, and have a strong drive for efficiency. I physically don't enjoy when I see inefficiencies. When things can be done in a better way, so the combination of liking the puzzles, despising inefficiencies, and liking the people, I think put me where I am, where I really enjoy getting the most out, or allowing people to grow to the fullest potential, seeing how they can contribute to our goal. There is always a goal, right? We are working for for-profit organizations. The goal is to make money, and how can you do it better? How can you improve the service and make the people feel satisfied in the process? I'm a great believer in appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry, for those who don't know, let's start with what normally happens in most organizations. Once a year, you have your evaluation, and we tell you, Joe, you're really good at these things, but you suck at that. So next year, we want you to focus on the area that you're not great at. And guess what? You'll never be great at this. Right? If you go to this point and you're not great at it, and then for the next year, you come to work and you scratch your wound every day, right? You focus on the area that you're not good at, trying to improve. Appreciative inquiry says the opposite. Say, Joe, we know you're not good at this. So let's find less opportunities for you to mess up. And you're really good at this. So let's find more areas for you to grow here. And let's see how you can contribute to the organization.
Right.
And by doing that, whenever I hire, I ask the person that we're hiring to edit the job description to where they want it to be. Right? If you get to influence your job to be your dream job, you're going to be much better at it. And often it will reveal that you would like to do something. And sometimes we'll say, sorry, you don't need that, or someone else is doing it. And we want to have clear track so you don't step in others people. But most of the time, I say, great, right? I mean, people normally add stuff. They don't take stuff off unless they really say, no, I really don't want to do this. And you want to know it up front. I don't want to give you responsibilities for something you don't feel passionately about, or you think like you're going to fail at. So it all goes together, putting the peoples in the puzzle. I think that would be my happy moment at work. And there's a lot of it. I mean, it really is a fun ride. When, for me personally, autonomy is really important. I knew it early on. When I was a young officer in the army, and I had a new young commander above me who kind of micromanaged me. I lost all the air, and I didn't enjoy the process. So I think allowing people to own what they do, but give clear goals so they can meet and exceed, makes it fun to come to work every day, even though work is here right now for the last year.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it sounds a little bit like your ikigai is finding other people's kind of reason for being. Daniel Pink, I don't know if you've read his books, but he writes a lot about that, the concept that it's far better to lean into people's strengths at a certain point in life than to try to fix their weaknesses. And he also shares just net growth. Like you actually move, better, faster if you lean into things that you already have some aptitude and passion.
Again, so partially is acknowledging your own shortcomings, right? I mean, knowing what you're good at and what you're not the best at, and I went to law school without writing. I listened, and then I copied. It was before computers, and most of us didn't have laptops at the time. So I Xeroxed my friends because they were way better in taking notes. And I'll never be a good note taker, but I can stay with the big picture. So it was knowing the team and having a team. But I think it forces you, knowing your shortcomings, working as part of a team, and relying on people who are good at it. And being aware of yourself, restrictions, and then finding where you could help others grow or give them the space to grow. You don't need to be involved much. Most people are great if you just give them the goals. Is key.
I completely agree. So, well, I feel like I'd be loath while you're here to not ask a few questions on behalf of the legal tech community. So now there's a huge amount of money, huge number of startups coming out every day, and that's where I get to the idea of the legend of the Gordian knot. The Gordian knot is a metaphor for an intractable problem. The story is that the Oracle of Gordium declared that any man who could untie this impossible knot on an ox cart, for whatever reason, was destined to be the ruler of all Asia. Obviously, all the smart people came and they couldn't untie this knot. And Alexander the Great walks up to it with his sword and slices it open. So I use this as an analogy all the time. So I think I meet a lot of people in the legal tech community who believe, and sometimes I agree with them, that they've invented the Gatling gun and they just need a meeting with the general, right? They need to show this thing off. It will change the course of history. And I would say 10 years ago, most of the time, when I saw new tech and new ideas, it wasn't true. And it's still not always true, of course. But it is sometimes true now. There are things out there that really are great. You being the general, with two of the biggest armies out there over the past few years, what would you say to those people? How do they cut that Gordian knot?
First, they need to have realistic expectations, right? I mean, in the corporate world, once you see a product you saw a product in a conference, usually it's about 6 months sales cycle, right? You saw the right person saw it, they're excited, they do some testing, they build a budget, and they get the boss to say, go ahead. In the law firm world, it used to be about 18 months, right? For most products, from the moment you see it, you go to ILTA, you meet the vendor, you see, this looks like a good idea. It's a problem I really have. I know I have it. It will take you usually about a year and a half, so it's 3 times longer. And that's before you involve AI. Most of the products, the exciting ones now that we look at, involve some level of AI. AI, in the most basic way to describe it, is something that until yesterday we needed a human to do, and now the machine can do. Right? That would be the most layman description. So the problem with something that involves AI is that you must have the lawyers, the busy frontline lawyers, acknowledge that this is a problem that machine can solve. Right? Unless they buy in, it's not ever going to happen. Then you do your 18 months and your process, and then they need to train the system because it replaces their judgment with the system judgment. They need to give a few samples, yes, no, and then they need to accept it at the end to say it actually does a good job. That usually double the amount of time from 18 months to 3 years.
Wow.
Right? So most of those products, for them to get, now we're talking about getting into the first law firm. Law firm is a herd, right? I mean, we all, because we're risk averse, if something was good enough for your firm, it's probably be good enough for my firm. So once you sold the product for 5 law firms, you're pretty sure sold it for 50 law firms within a few months later on. Because by then there is buzz and we all trust each other and we come together and we tell each other about, hey, there is something that really saves time or helps lawyers or brings value. And we are very, again, at least in the US market, and I think also in the UK market, maybe other than the magic circle, there is an openness and there is conversation about what works, and we all in it together. So expectation is the first thing. The second thing is realization that your first idea most likely is not what you're going to succeed on. Right? When you look at not only in legal tech, but also in legal tech, it's not what you thought you're going to do. It's someone taking your technology and tells you, if you just move this and do that, it can do this for me. And that's what's going to be the product. Right? So we, in general, don't like to work with startups early on because of the risk associated with their change. Right? There's several things could happen. One, they are going to close. Right? Statistically speaking, most startups don't make it to year 3. 2, they're going to change their product focus. And 3, if they're successful, they're going to be bought by someone who will then change the product focus. Our biggest resource when we come to evaluate new technology is our attorney's time, right? The lawyer's time to test and to adopt a new technology. And we have to be very careful with that. There is only that much change you could introduce on a regular basis, right? I mean, Ray calls for the singularity is near, is happening. Things are moving faster and faster. Our lawyers are still the same human beings, right? With the same, they can only tolerate that much change in any given period of time. Now, this year, we already send them all to work from home. We force them to switch to use Zoom all the time, right? So 2 changes that happen just over the books. We are going to change our operating system or our enterprise search system or our document management system. You almost maxed out before you started this year. And now you're going to introduce another concept or another product. There are few lawyers at the firm who have no problem with that, right? They would love to test new things. They thrive on that. They have no problem with change. They are your agents, but the vast majority are not those, right? So you need to find those that would like to engage all the time. Some of them sometimes will switch and say, okay, you know what? I really like what you do better than what I do. Let's bring me to the knowledge and innovation team. But most lawyers, we need to be really careful with how much change we introduce to them and how much products we ask them to test that are not part of the day job. So that's the reason we would rather work with products that were more proven, even if it means taking, and every once in a while we'll take a risk with someone really early on because we get really excited. And the excitement there usually is about the people, not the product.
Right.
If you find someone who you feel really listens and really can do what you need and is willing to work with you. And again, I think that was the gift of Recomind early on was Derek Shurin. Derek, one of the founders, happened to be the front of the cell. So he was in the front, he was able to hear what people want. And because he was one of the founders, he also went back and said, okay, we're going to change the product now to do this. Yep. And true desire to understand the person in front of you. Often you see when you deal with salespeople, they're trying to sell you what they have, as opposed to try to understand your problem, understand your puzzle. What are you trying to achieve? And then see how they can change things in what they came with, as opposed to try to force you to use what they have and to make it work for you. And that's the success key. Key to success is really being able to adopt, because we don't have the same expectations, especially when it comes to new products, about where is the value. Yeah, I understand what you do. I'm not excited about what you do today, but if you could only do this, that's really solving my problem. So
I think you touched on so many interesting points there, some of which probably disappointed the audience, in that I think a lot of legal tech and legal innovation CEOs, once they built something that they believe is good, want to step away from that sales process. And it's advice I give all the time. Like, I got bad news for you. They need to talk to somebody that can make fundamental change in the company and can have that two-way dialogue. You also touched on a concept that they talk about in innovation books as the adjacent possible. These kind of easy fixes, picking up a piece here and a piece there from off-the-shelf tools or services or solutions that just are sometimes outside of the cone of the person building the solution. And I think keeping eyes open to those, and that's something we're trying to do at LexFusion, to make sure that our members know all of the skills and talents and connections and technologies that are within the group, and so that they can, much more quickly approach that adjacent possible in a way that's really exciting. So we only have 4 more minutes. I want to make sure to talk about your skills conference. I mean, you talked about, if somebody breaks through that 3-year period, they get into a firm, they get into 5 firms, it is very likely that they'll be able to, get into, they probably solve the problem for 50. I feel like your conference is that kind of vector for, I don't want to say infect, this is a bad time to use that word, but to pass on an idea.
So once a year we get together, the people who lead knowledge and innovation in law firms from around the world. We used to do it at the last day of Legal Week, Legal Tech. This year, because it's virtual, we decided not to compete and we're doing it in January. And we have 2 parts. The first day is just us talk among ourselves, honest conversation, closed door. And the second day is open door for anyone who has something interesting. And the way we work, because it's a true peer-to-peer organization, there is no membership, it's just us get together. We ask everyone to submit a proposal, and it goes to all the attendees, and they get to vote of which are the 15 sessions that they want to see. So the key, by the way, is to bring a law firm to talk with you, right? So if we want to hear from our peers, this is a peer organization, so we could always have a demo and just a sales pitch, but having a law firm talk about the pain, what worked, what didn't work, being able to answer questions, make it much more likely to use. So skills this year is going to be in January 28, 29, or 22, 21, 22. And that's what's going to happen there. Yeah. And awesome. Yeah, we're also hiring. So we changed the structure of the knowledge. We created a few more functions. We have the traditional KM, that we always have the practice smarter people, the lawyers who make the other lawyers work smarter. We have the library who focus on research. We have managing clerk on the docket. We have the practice technology. We created practice innovation and data analytics groups, for which we're hiring now. So Kay Kim is our director of practice innovation. We just hired our director of data analytics that will be announced soon. And we have on our site a few jobs. So if you're interested, please apply.
Yeah, absolutely. Oz, thank you so much for all of that. I feel like we covered a lot, how to get legal tech into firms, what to think about, the timelines. You're hiring, you're throwing the conference. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Thanks, Litera TV. Till next week.
Bye.